Well, we're in for a treat now with this next video. I mean, this is loads of fun that we're going to get here in this variation against the Petrov. And this is probably one of Black's most testing variations that you can play in our gambit system. But it's fascinating, some of the positions here. Some of the most fascinating I've studied in any opening. So you can imagine what you're in for here, a real treat of tactics and attacking flair. Now, I expect Black can keep the balance here with correct play, but he's, again, as throughout this course, got to be very, very careful and play extremely accurately. And because on move, of course, we're looking at the Petrov. Of course, because we're playing d4, we're actually taking Black into muddied waters where he might not be that acquainted with what he needs to do. And looking at some resources on this opening that have recently come out, I won't name too many at the moment, but even some late books, they don't give the critical lines. They seem to not treat this variation with the respect it deserves, which is surprising because it's blooming. I love that word, blooming. I've got to stop saying it. It's very sharp. Oh, let's speak with the Queen's English, shall we? It's very sharp, young man, and pay your taxes. It's very sharp, and Black needs to know what he's doing. So the line we're talking about now is knight takes e4, and this is Black's most popular choice. So we're moving on to this move. As we saw, the other lines are covered, and White's very... the thing is, with the other move, pawn takes here. The way I'd look at this move is, as long as we know to go here, take, and when our queen's attacked to go to f4, and then develop. There's not too much you really, you can obviously, and you should memorize all the lines, but it's very easy for White to play those positions. Just look where the Black king goes and aim for it. So you don't really need to, memorizing is good, but it's not as critical to know those lines in depth. But with knight takes e4, I would certainly advise that some of these lines, because they're so tactical, general principles I will try to give you. But this one line is something I would recommend you kind of look over a couple of times and try to, really get into and even memorize. The Move Trainer is such a great tool, hence why Chessable is certainly the best platform to do this course on. I mean, I wanted to do it for Ginger GM originally. It was an idea 5 years ago, Grandmaster Gambit's repertoire. But it just seems that it works better on Chessable because you can train these sharp variations out. So, rather than just trying to memorize it just from the video, which is good, you can also memorize it with the Move Trainer. So it seems to fit in very well. So now our favorite capture is the rather rare, again, I say rare, but it's d takes e5. Black may expect bishop d3 here, which is much more common. And this move will most likely give you, make your opponent think, because it's actually 6 times less popular than bishop d3. So, 1 out of 6 times the Black player will face this move. And that's clearly going to be like a bit of a shock to him. So the move we are looking at now is bishop c5. And this is obviously a critical move. In the next video, we look at the calmer d5, which requires less memorization. But after bishop c5, I think because the positions are so sharp, we should look at them in some depth. I think that makes sense. One bad move from either side can just lead to a loss. Obviously, everything, again, being properly prepared, and we've got some new and interesting novelties for you as we do most of these variations. Again, Richard Pallas is mainly to thanks for that extra bit of analysis he's added, which I feel is going to make this course stellar artois. We call that beer the wife beater in England. Sure you wanted to know that because it's so strong. Not very nice, is it? Not a very nice statement. And now we're going to play bishop c4. And again, we did have a look at this in the game Elmasi versus Giri in the games, the model games, to give you a little introduction to this course. And this move is our move. It's super aggressive. My main idea is, again, to take on f7. It fits in with our other bishop moves against e5, and it wastes no time whatsoever. We don't even care about our rook here. Fantastically interesting. And this is where black needs to tread a narrow path. So, you know, in a club game, your opponent might think, oh, I'll develop my bishop to c5. And then after bishop c4, he might be shocked again. And if he starts thinking here, you know you're onto a good roll, because, you know, it's more dangerous to black, as I've said many times before. Now, knight takes f2 is clearly the best move, greedy and best. If black doesn't take the challenge up here, well, you know, we're always just castling for a start if other things on f7 are not happening. And when we castle, because our pawn is so far advanced, it's really going to give us a ginormous attack. Black doesn't have these pieces over on his king side anymore, so he can get a lot of trouble there as well. And another advantage of putting our bishop on c4 is that it's not as easy for black to play d5, because we're just going to win that pawn. So you really must, in this position, take here. Let's just have a quick look at some of the other options. Well, first of all, bishop takes f2 check we looked at in the model game. And I don't want to repeat things too much. Just to say, after king f1, black is in trouble. And if you're unsure about this line, go back to that model game at the start of the course, the Elmasi versus Giri one, where we look at this a little bit. But black is in serious trouble. The problems here is his knight is going to be attacked. And if the knight moves, we win the bishop. If the bishop moves back now, well, we then have ideas, of course, because black hasn't castled, of taking here immediately and playing queen d5 or queen d5 straight away. And it's worth noting that bishop f7 is generally the move to play in a lot of these. But anyway, yeah, you can go back and have a look at that. So the only other move which black has tried is d5. We just mentioned this. And black is basically with this move saying, well, I probably don't know the theory, but I'm a little bit scared of going into your gambit. So I'm going to try to give a pawn back to get some development. And then I'm going to grab on f2. And in this case, actually, queen takes d5 is the right solution here. Because if we go bishop takes, well, now knight takes f2, it does make more sense for black. Because this extra developing move, this extra file, gives black many more resources. And our main move against knight f2, we're going to see in a minute, bishop f7 and queen d5 doesn't work here. So that's why we need to take with the queen. And because of the threats, black needs to take here. We take back, and knight takes f2 now is what black should play. This whole line, by the way, is just good for white. Just to make sure you know that. If bishop takes f2 check, well, normally the way to meet this is by putting the king on f1. Just worth remembering, the king on f1 for some tactical reasons we don't really need to go into. The king, if the bishop ever comes here, just remember to put your king on f1. And now, well, okay, the knight is attacked. If black tries to defend it and plays knight takes f6, maybe this is his idea. Well, we're not going to be winning a piece, but after king takes here and rook e1 check, we transpose to a position that can arise in some of the other variations. Again, we looked at this in the Elmasi game, this kind of thing. And then in I think it was e4, e5, 2, knight f3, others, which I've got noted as a1, 4, bishop c5. But this is, okay, we're not going to win a piece, but we got this tremendous development, and black's king doesn't have an easy place to go to. That's the problem here. So after queen takes, knight takes is forced, and now we should go rook f1. and we don't need to give that rook up now. We're threatening to take the knight, and 2 moves. It seems like c6 is maybe the best. Knight g4, the only square the knight can get out to. Well, just simple development here. Knight c3. And we got very nice development in this position. And we're threatening to come in to e4, lovely square. Our other knight will come to g5 at the right moment. And we have a lot of tactical opportunities here. For example, knight to e3 here. Well, again, in this course, don't be afraid to give up your bishops because it's all about tempo. And in this position, yeah, we give up a bishop, but we're getting rid of an undeveloped piece for a developed piece. And now we've got potentially 4 pieces developed if we include the rook. And there's actually a move here, which is not so easy to see, I have to admit, in this position. And it's the kind of position where you want to play actively because of your development. But knight g5 is now covered. And you should always look in these positions, as we said, when you're attacking, trying to bring in, trying to use when you're attacking, when you've got the initiative, you'll develop pieces. So you should be looking at these guys. And, you know, knight over here is easily met by knight a6. And there's a very nice move now, knight to h4, funnily enough. And this move is strong because, well, first of all, we are creating a threat against f7, so black has to castle. And now our knight can come into f5. And the reason this is particularly strong is that black can't go bishop takes f5 because we win material after bishop b7. And this is actually just a very safe way to grab the rook. So with this knight here, black now has to lose a move moving his bishop. Let's say bishop g5. And now we can use all our pieces, like knight e4. That bishop is not safe. It's gone here to defend e7. If it goes the other way, we could have gone check, then win this pawn. So now it has to go all the way back. So even though the queens are off, we're forcing these pieces back. And there's one more key move here. And the key move in this position is, again, look at these pieces. Can they be moved? Well, at the moment, they've been defended against quite well. But now knight to d4. And this was quite a weird maneuver, I have to admit. But we forced black on the defensive. And in actual fact, our initiative is incredibly strong here because of the idea of e6. Our knight is supporting that e6 move from d4. Look at black's development. It's really, really bad. e6 is a really strong threat using our pieces while black's still sleeping. So we will, again, like I say, when we're just getting used to this opening to start with, I'm going to repeat from the start so you can just get used to it. So we're going d takes, bishop c5, bishop c4, and now we're looking at d5, which is not a good move. We've explained why you should take with a queen. Knight takes f2 is correct, rook f1, and now we're keeping with knight g4. We'll come to c6 in a minute. We need to develop more pieces. This square is a great knight for our knight, hiding behind that pawn, centralized, attacking the bishop. So let's bring it out. And now if knight to e3, we just take that one off and we go knight h4. Now, if black doesn't play knight to e3, but now plays, for example, c6, well, we want to keep that bishop as active as possible, but also as secure as possible. So bishop b3 is the best square. Maybe c4 is okay, but you might get hit by a tempo later on. b3 seems very, very secure. And we've seen what happens if the knight comes here. One of the downsides that black's got of playing c6 is d6 is weak. So when we played this knight move, in some cases, this square is very, very juicy. For example, after knight d7, black's got to develop these guys at some point. Knight to e4. And now bishop e7, trying to cover everything. And here, knight on f to g5. This is, again, using our initiative. And I have to say, one of the most imaginative chess players, and someone I like giving credit where credit's due, someone we've taken a lot of inspiration from for this course, someone who has been a real creator of attacking ideas throughout his career, is someone you may not have heard of because he doesn't play so much anymore, but it's a Swedish grandmaster, Johnny Hector. and he's well worth looking at his ideas. And again, this was a game he had against Andreas Moen in Oslo 2016. And Johnny Hector, like I say, he's a really, he comes up with great ideas. And here, Andreas, a friend of mine, took on e5. You have to stop this one, and you have to try and get rid of that pawn. But, okay, we take here anyway. And now rook f8. And here we use that d6 square. And the game went king d7. Now we keep the tempo up. And now, very nice move here. We can't do anything in this structure with our developed pieces. Taking on c8 is okay, but we're getting rid of our knight for an undeveloped piece. So if we can develop, we will. And bishop f4 with castles kingside to follow left Johnny in really strong position. For example, if black takes our knight, we're castling, and look at our pieces now flowing into the game. That bishop on d6 cannot be saved here. So this line d5, queen takes, and now knight to f2, and knight g4 fails to impress because of knight c3. So I think why not go c6 first? So this is what you can consider the main line here. And now, of course, our bishop comes back. And now I think black should try to get this knight back somewhere, right? We've seen how it goes if the knight goes to g4. The problem with the knight going to g4, it allows our knight into e4. So even though black's knight is not in trouble on g4, our knight has a very good route. This way, the black knight stops our, well, it doesn't stop our knight, but it at least manages to swap itself off. And there's no way to actually trap this knight on this square on e4. So we should instead go knight bd2. And now after knight takes, bishop takes, we could say that really this position is kind of a dream open position for us. Now I know the queen's exchanged off, but hopefully you're convinced now in a number of situations that even though the queen's come off the board in some of these tactical lines, the initiative does not go away. The initiative remains. We have a handy lead in development, and when I'm talking about open games, I hope you realize that this whole course is about open positions. I mean, the first time I heard the concept of open, semi-open, and closed positions was from a series of books by ex-world champion Karpov, one of my favorite players actually ever, which you might find a bit surprising because he's considered a very positional and endgame player. But Karpov did this series of books of him playing open positions, semi-open positions, and closed positions. Now, when the pawns are very free and there's lots of open lines, like open files, open diagonals, it's an open position. And really, throughout this course, that's what we're striving for, because that's what a gambitier aggressor wants, open lines to attack on. So that's another thing to bear in mind, the open line scenario. Now, knight g5 is a really strong threat, so h6 is one way to stop that. And what would you play now? Let's see if you can figure out a good way to play this. Castling can't be terrible here, but again, when we have the initiative, we should be looking at our developed pieces, and I'd say these two, and see if we can use them, right? And look at targets, see if we can add the pressure in. And this knight h4 again is a very useful move. Because it's not so easy for black to defend against this. I mean, bishop e6 is the best move, but now black's going to have some other problems, transferring one issue, his bad development, to another issue, a dodgy pawn structure. But if he castles here, well, he can't castle. Let's just put that on the board. This is a mistake he could play straight away, because a knight g6, which is very attractive, and we're taking on f7 next move. That bishop, incredibly strong throughout this course. And if he goes rook f8 here, well, now we castle queenside because we can't apply any more pressure immediately. And this gives black a chance to go wrong by blocking his bishop. He should go here, so that after knight to f5, we might as well now play this move. he can at least get rid of that knight. He needs to get rid of that knight. And now we have this strong pressure against f7. So rook d8, rook d1, rook here is the only way to try and defend. But it's no surprise here that a move such as e6 is working very well. This happened in Zinchenko-Fayard, Capella Grande 2009. Capella Grande, this tournament in north of France, quite near to Calais, where a lot of the war sort of happens with the English history and, you know, coming over. I won't go that way in this video, but Capelle, I've played there a number of times. It's a fascinating tournament. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, open in the world. Played in this massive hall in this kind of really quiet town. And the funny thing is, all I think title players, even FMs, even maybe CMs, they, you know, you have lunch and dinner, and there's 2 games a day, so you have your lunch before the second round, and they have unlimited free wine on the tables before the second round of the day, and it's quite funny to see the table allocation, this massive hall, and you can drink as much as you like. If you finish a bottle, you can get another bottle, and it's really funny to see some tables, the amount of wine that is consumed by strong players before they play their next game. Now, I went there when I was relatively young. You know, well, I was 20 or something, and I wasn't in you know, divulging into drinking before the games, which I don't do in FIDE rated games. But the amount of drinks that was consumed, it was crazy. So it was quite an experience. You know, you can imagine the state of some of these grandmasters when they rolled up to the game after consuming copious amounts of wine. But after this, bishop takes, we have, okay, we're not winning, but we have 2 bishops, ongoing initiative in an open position, and the 2 bishops in open position are very, very strong. So let's go and have a look at knight h4, and now, well, I think we covered this one, haven't we, with that capture. So bishop e6 is the only other move we need to look at, and now we can take on e6, and this is a very nice square for our knight. Attacking that rook, which has to go to this one. And now we can keep the initiative going, which we should be doing. We should be always, again, I say it again, but I want to get it across to you, using our developed pieces. And knight f4. This happened in Mazet-Bolestin, Montreal, 2008. And after king to e7, well, okay, castling now makes sense. Knight d7. So far, everything seems pretty normal. And maybe black was feeling reasonably confident here, but now Mazet played quite a nice move, which is h4, a simple way to keep up the pressure. Just going to cement the knight here. White has control of both the open files, and black can't put a rook on f8. There's a couple of ways black can go wrong. For example, if the knight takes here, we can go rook e1, and we got bishop c3 at the right moment to get rid of that knight, and we're breaking through on e6, which will be horrendous for black. If bishop d4, trying to win that pawn, well, now we have bishop b4 check, rook takes d4, and knight g6 check, and we're just going to pick up the pawn on b4, which should be winning. So h4 is sort of showing our command of the position, and g5 was played in that game, but now after pawn takes, knight d3, bishop d4, rook e1. Black's defending as best as he can, but we can certainly increase the pressure here. This pawn is very weak. We're better here. We've got rook e4, chasing that bishop away, and our rook's going to infiltrate via h7. This is very nasty. It doesn't maybe look nasty for black, but because of certain weaknesses, it is nasty. So let's go back to now what you're probably going to get in this variation after bishop c5 and now bishop c4, knight takes f2. Imagine if black's not prepared here. He knows he's entering into dark waters. And now, very excitingly, we're going to go and we're going to enjoy that one. That's a move to savor, right? Bishop takes f7 and you just go, yeah, like I enjoy playing that move. Yeah, roll the shoulders. You know, look confident. Yeah, loving it. And now black really has to take this one. I mean, Some players go king f8 because they can smell a rat, but we still continue with queen d5 here. And now with rook f1 coming, if the bishop moves, black has to now grab on h1. But the problem in this position is that, you know, black might as well have taken that piece anyway. And we've even got a stronger move than bishop takes c5. And our stronger move is bishop h5, threatening checkmate. And yeah, I mean, you know, if you're counting pieces then too much and getting worried, again, you might have picked the wrong course. But just look at the pieces you have out in these positions that are developed. They are creating so many threats. And now bishop f2 doesn't work because after queen e2, queen e7, bishop g5. Well, this transposes actually. But look at this. This is beautiful, beautiful stuff. The more likely move, or I feel, is queen e7. And again, now we follow that philosophy. Can we do anything with our pieces here? Not really. So we bring in the reinforcements. These guys want to, you know, they don't want to miss out on all the fun. They can see that the black king's over there, and they're like, "Oh, come on, let me at him." They're like Scrappy Doo. Did anyone watch? Anyone watch that? What was it? Scooby Dooby Doo and Scrappy Doo. Can you remember Scrappy? Was it Scrappy? Scrappy, and he's always wanting to get in for a fight against the ghost. He's like, "Let me at him, let me at him, let me at him," like a crazy man. And here, that's what those pieces are doing. They want to get in, so let them in. Bishop g5. Now, the queen, if it moves, would take that bishop. Would only the exchange down with an onslaught coming. So now black should play this one, and here black's next move is pretty much forced because obviously this is annoying, and he's got to go queen e6. And this position is very good for white after knight to c3. And again, you might be thinking, I don't want to swap queens off, but you got to remember that queen exchanges are often very good. Look at your pieces. You know, black's queen is a good defender. Without that queen, our pieces can still do a tremendous amount of damage here. And moving our queen would lose time. Time is more important in this position. We're going to regain a piece here. That knight's going to drop. Then the bishop's going to have to lose another tempo. And so far, this position has scored 4 out of 4 for white. And it's engine approved, of course, which we've got to make sure we're not going to, you know, especially these lines. These are the kind of lines where you are a rook down. We had to make sure that we're not going to give you any terrible positions. You wouldn't be happy there, would you? I don't want you pressing that refund button. So 3 options. Let's have a look at them. I mean, queen takes d5 in actual fact is just really bad, because if 4 options, if we go here, and because we're threatening this and this, it's actually, this is one of the worst options for black. So black, let's have a look. So h6, well, unfortunately now we do have to move that bishop back, but it's no real biggie. And now g6 is interesting. And here we take on h1, and that bishop has to move. So bishop b6, and now rook to f1, and we're really forcing the exchange of queens here. By the way, knight h4 is a very interesting intermezzo, but knight d5 is perfectly fine. We're only the exchange down with everything putting pressure on, so black needs to grab this one, and now knight to h4 anyway. And this combination of our remaining pieces is really not nice for black. King e8, other squares are just as bad. And now knight to s6 check, king d8, knight g6. And I like this. I like this. I like this little way of playing, because we're going to win our rook back here. Look at the domination of those knights with a better game. So this is simple. This is a simple way to go. Happened in a correspondence game in 2021, actually. Noga Popov, which white won. So That's a simple way to play against this g6 move and h6 and g6. So let's have a look. Queen e6, mental lines, right? Well, h6 first, then g6. That we just take stuff and put our rook against the king. Line up. And what about instead of h6, knight c6, a developing move? Well, again, we obviously take that one off. And the idea is to take that knight and then line up. This is normally the idea. And, well, let's say black now takes the queens off, moves his bishop back. Well, rook to f1 is certainly a good move, but we can even play knight to h4 immediately. This is quite weird that how often knight h4 shows its main, shows I don't know what I'm doing. You know, you've got to give yourself a little bit of entertainment when you're doing these long things. As much as the lines are fascinating to go over, you know, the brain often drifts a little bit to, like, I'm thinking of horses, yeah, manes, yeah, I've got to do a little horse noise there. Yes, totally sensible, Simon. But knight to h4, it's really difficult now to stop this one. With, again, that black king, even though the queen's off, every white piece is attacking. I mean, one nice line, let's say takes here, is this is one way to checkmate. And let's have a look at like g6, trying to escape. Well, let's give that one a check. And up you come. Maybe this is black's best try. But now we just secure that one. And this bishop is ready to move, so it should be taken. And in we come. These are kind of the fun lines, which you're going to get this position. And can you see the mate now? Look at those knights. Look for the checks. Let's not allow the king to come to d4. So we check and take that square away. And look at this pretty checkmate. Look, if you get this checkmate in any game on the board, make sure I'm on Twitter. Twitter me. And you deserve, I think you should, you know, you should be quite happy with a course if you ever get something like this, right? So let's run through this again, because, you know, these lines, they are complex. So we're going bishop c4, knight takes f2. We're taking here. Now king f8, bad move. We come queen d5 anyway. And after this one, bishop h5. And, you know, if you don't want to, you know, if you can't remember everything, you could even stop here with the just with the memory that bishop g5 is coming. Great initiative. But, you know, if you want to be very thorough, which obviously it's best to do, then this position with knight c3, another key move, is good. Maybe the last try we could look at is g6 immediately. Black doesn't really have many good moves. And now we give the check. And now the king should go to e8. Now, if it goes to g8, we can bring in some pieces. And this is quite beautiful, actually. Well, can you spot the move? It's like, the thing about this course is it could easily be a tactical course. Because even though we're looking at some fascinating openings, the amount of times where it's like, right, find the win for white, it is quite phenomenal and very exciting. Knight g5. And again, this shows you that even without the queens, black can be helpless. And this is one case where he can't stop our knight coming in with checkmate. Imagine how satisfying it would be to get to this position when, you know, you swap the queens. Black's maybe like, oh, yeah, I got the queens off. I'm going to be safe. But then he realizes he's completely helpless to checkmate. So that's why the king has to come to e8. And now knight g5 anyway. And again, in this situation, it's that timing. I mean, you know, knight g5, if you're not thinking of this kind of move straight away, then you've got to, you know, keep going with this course. You'll get there eventually. But this course is trying to teach you, hopefully, that this is, you know, this forward aggression, don't waste tempo is what we want from you in this particular, you know, this particular course in Hull. And after queen takes d5, knight takes d5. Again, this is very, very scary. The the critical line is obviously taking the bishop. What happens if black moves that one away, for example? Well, now we can use the f6 square. Again, we're going for mate. And now bishop g7. That rook is embarrassed. And after knight takes d5, king e8, bishop takes h8, black needs to get his knight out. But now rook to f1. And, well, we're a piece down, but we're going to win one back. We're threatening this one, and that king can't survive. If the knight tries to get out, then we bring the rook in. And this is horrible. Actually, bishop g7, and I mean, okay, I'm sure you can see a number of threats around black's king here. So knight g5. The last line we'll look at in this one is taking on h5, and now bishop g7 is a useful move to play. And here d6 is the only way black can try and fight on. He needs to get some pieces out. If he moves the rook, well, knight takes c7, and we can actually start taking some pieces, converting one advantage into the other. You know, if we can't checkmate, we want to convert, even if we're material down, we want to convert one form of energy, like in physics, to another form of energy. And that's what we're doing, converting the initiative into a material advantage. So d6 is best, but even after the simple rook takes h1, black needs to find some more accurate moves. And bishop h4 is another accurate move he needs to find. Everything else is just bad. And we have now no way to checkmate, I'm afraid. But after the sequence of moves here, and again, this is one of the ones where general principles, I think it's one of those lines you kind of have to learn. But after c3 here, black's managed to defend, but it still looks very good for white. With bishop f6 to come, h3, getting rid of those bishops. Our knight dominates the board, and black has a weak pawn structure. He's defended, but he's a lot worse, and that's with perfect play from him. Okay, so now we do come on to knight takes f2, bishop takes f7, and king takes, clearly the best move. And we come in with the check again, and now the king should come to g6. We've already mentioned in the introduction why king e8, the only other sensible move, is bad. Well, now we get in those reinforcements. We don't actually take this one. Remember, we're not a rook down at the moment, so we can just play bishop here. This is the only way to save the queen. And after king takes here, it's equal to material, but we've got a big attack. Remember, black can't castle ever. And with our guys, as we've seen in a lot of these lines coming in, it's fun times ahead. So king to g6, forced, and now we take on c5, a little forcing variation. Black has to grab some material, and now again it's time to think, what do we do now? Well, can we do anything with our developed pieces? The answer is really no at the moment. Don't count those rooks. You know, look at the black king. Don't count rooks. Look at the king. So we need to bring in reinforcements, right? And that means these guys. Let me at him. Let me at him. Let me at him. Let me have him. Let me at him. Scrappy dabby doo. Knight to c3, and this knight has a very good future. And again, from looking at the model games at the start of the course, I think you'll appreciate the future of this knight. And this knight is actually, and this is the key thing to remember with this guy, this knight is heading for d5. This is a key square. Why d5? Well, the knight then wants to get to f4. If that white knight gets to f4, another piece has joined in this onslaught of that poor king on g6. And this route in is a key point to remember, into f4. There's no point heading the knight, in this case, to e4, which we saw before. We're putting it there before to try and attack the king on e8 or to try and attack the f7 pawn. But remember, don't play moves without a purpose. Even if you think you're remembering something I said, one thing I want to get across to you, think for yourself And you should be able to explain every single move you play verbally to someone who's the same strength of you. So, for example, how would you explain knight e4? What's the purpose? But you could hopefully explain knight d5, and this is what you've got to be able to, in your head, explain to someone a sim standard by saying, well, I move my knight to d5 because I'm trying to attack my opponent's weakened king. In order to attack that weakened king, I need to get more firepower, more pieces against it. My pieces, queen and knight at the moment on their own are not enough. So by bringing this knight to f4, I'm increasing that firepower. Hence why knight d5 is the move to play. And this is the kind of thing which, you know, you don't need to say that out loud at the board. It'd be a bit blooming weird. You're not filming a DVD. But these are the kind of things you should be internally, you should have this internal discussion with your moves. Every move needs to have a purpose. And here, the best defense is h6. Now, we did see d6 played by Anish Giri, and we know how strong, theoretically good Anish is. And another key thing I will mention before we go on to these moves, as well as this knight maneuver, what else are we trying to do as white? Well, another key move is getting our queen to the right square. At the moment, it's not on the right square because it can't get in towards the king. So the queen wants to have a go at attacking the king, and the king is on the light square. We want to get it on the light square. So queen c4 is another key attacking idea. Why c4? Because it allows us to travel over to attack that king, and it also allows us to attack it on this diagonal d3 h7. So there's two attacking ideas, and this is just with the pieces we've got developed. And the third one, we haven't talked about the knight on f3, is knight h4 check. Now, at the moment, that's impossible. But when we get our queen to c4, we're protecting that square, so we can play knight check. So these are like three main ideas to continue the attack. Now, d6, queen c4 in the introductory model game. So go and have a look at that one, which seems to be good for white, these variations. Of course, very complex, but white's doing well. Now, black can play knight c6 in this position when we have to decide, I think, here, do we play knight d5 or do we play queen c4? And I feel queen c4 is probably the move we play before knight d5. So obviously we mentioned the knight d5 idea, but the queen is a more powerful piece. So let's use our most powerful piece first. And queen c4 should be played. And now h6 has to be done. And the knight now comes to d5. This leads to our main line. So let's just have a look at our main line. I'll go over this again at the end. These lines, they're complicated, right? The rest of the course does get a bit easier. I would like to mention that. So h6, queen c4. And now there are two moves, really. To be honest, I mean, I'm saying queen c4 should be played. I actually think knight d5 may lead to the same thing after knight c6. I don't think this check has any independent value. In actual fact, when h6 has been played, we kind of want to not rush this check. I know I mentioned this check, but that was just because it's an obvious thing to point out. But another way that knight can go is f6. I really want you to remember that one. We'll come more of that in a second. So you could go knight there straight away, but let's stick with getting our powerful piece in. And now there are two moves. There's either knight c6, which has been Aronian's choice, or there is the more traditional king h7. And I say king h7 is more traditional, as in it's been played more often. Aronian's knight c6 is a very brave move, because after king h7, we basically can force a draw here. And a lot of games do go a draw with the queen coming to these two light squares. So you have that option after king h7, which of course we're not going to do. You're not buying this course to force draws, are you? You know, go and get the Berlin, you know, drawing with the Berlin course. Who's going to do that? How to draw playing against the Berlin with the white pieces. So, well, I mean, it's a very interesting position here. So I'm just checking. Of course, I don't want to make sure I don't miss anything. I'm just trying to decide which one we go for, king here or knight or knight. I think we're going to go for king h7 first because it's the old traditional line. And the reason this does force a draw, by the way, is that g6 is a move that black can't really play because knight d5 is so strong. But we're not going to look at queen e4 because we're not playing for the draw. Let's just not look at that. The move we're playing for is knight d5, and this is such an attractive move because it creates a big threat. Remember, when you're attacking, simple things I'm trying to get across to you, not just opening wise in these videos, but I'm trying to get into your mind a little bit. Hope you don't mind. It's only the chess side of your mind, and that's why I think the videos are quite useful because you get these. You even get these subliminal ideas stuck in there by me repeating myself. Might even get a bit boring for you, but you know, at least you're going to get the ideas in there. And when you're attacking pieces, try to look for the checks, look for the captures, but also look to create threats. This course is about not letting your opponent get off the canvas when he's down. And this move creates a really strong threat. And it's very surprising that in Cyrus Lakhdar, I say this wrong, this guy makes the most chess books I've ever seen in the world. And I really like them. I think they're in general very impressive and good chess books. But we have referenced these positions again against all recent work. So we've done our bibliography work. Wow, I managed to say a long word. More than 4 letters wrong. Give yourself a pat on the back. And Cyrus, in his quite recent work called The Petrov Defense, and this is a guide for the Petrov players, doesn't even mention this move in that book, which I find quite shocking, actually. I mean, it's easy to do. Come on, I don't want to be critical because I've done this before as well. I have. You know, we try to do the best we can. We look at games, but it's quite easy to, you know, if you're looking at tens of thousands of variations, to miss one line can happen. But it's quite a big omission because this is a recent book. Imagine your opponent's got that book. He's following the theory. You play knight d5, which is a great move. And your opponent now is like, well, what? That wasn't in the book. That wasn't in the book. And the point of this move is quite shocking. Knight to f6 check. So, for example, knight to c6, normal move, right? Boom! Put that into your pipe and smoke it, sir. And if you take this one, well, if you take with the queen, you lose your queen. Remember, that knight's not getting out of jail either. Queen f7 is what we call check. And certainly a big one. And obviously, if the king tries to run, now we see that third option I mentioned before. It was the queen and the knight, but don't forget this guy. Knight there, checkmate. I mean, come on, how brilliant is that? So knight d5, oh my words, what a move. What a stonking move to play. It's a phenomenal move. And it's actually quite tough now for black to defend. I mean, rook e8 is actually the only good defensive move in order to meet this one with queen takes. If black plays rook to f8, which kind of looks normal, I think, right? You're getting ready to sacrifice that way. Well, now knight here doesn't work, but we can now swap to queen e4. We're using the light squares. And black's on the verge of losing. I'm not going to say losing, but white has a he's better. For example, king h8 might be played. If g6, we want to keep threatening things. Remember, we got the initiative. We either go for the kill or threaten. And now queen e3 is a very nice way to threaten that one. And now with g5 played, the only move, look at black's king, And here, there are a number of interesting moves, but I actually quite like, and this is where we're bringing in reinforcements. This check is okay, but after king g7, there's no obvious follow-up because we don't have a light square bishop, unfortunately. So here, we can bring in reinforcements and bishop d2 with the idea of actually castling, getting rid of that knight, but also in some positions putting the bishop on c3. So when the king does move to that diagonal, we're ready to kill it. And this is just really good for white. Even though we're a rook down here, we're going to win the knight back with a major attack here. And, you know, some of these lines I could try to analyze for checkmate in every single case, but there's no need. You know, put it on the computer if you're not convinced, but we've already done that for you. White's doing well. I suppose, you know, it is a bit challenging. I understand to understand when you guys should change to a move like bishop d2. And it's going through those processes of, can a capture work? Well, not really, because the queen is defending. Calculate the most aggressive moves. Does the check help? Well, checks are not always good. You only check if you achieve something definite. The king goes there, and if you don't have a follow-up, I don't think I want to do that. Do we do the other knight check? Well, I don't think so, because that allows black to sacrifice back. And we might as well keep that in the air. So what about bringing in reinforcements? I can't do anything with these three guys. So yeah, the bishop and the rook. So that's when you find bishop d2. Now, another idea for black is king h8. But here, bishop takes h6. What an awesomely cool move to play. Bringing in the reinforcements. Tremendous move. And the onslaught continues. Now, taking is key. If black suddenly decides he wants to get some pieces out, well, he's left it a little bit late. We can go just simply bishop g5. Now, another very interesting, two strong players, Shrezhnikov against Friedman, Tallinn 2013, actually went queen to h. That can't be right, actually, can it? Queen h4. Maybe bishop. Okay, sorry about that, because he can take it. Maybe he can go queen h4, but why offer the exchange of queens with the idea that we're going to win these two rooks? Okay, I'm not going to look at that line. We're going to go bishop g5. Bishop g5. And yeah, this first must make more sense, right? Maybe queen h4 was played, but I wouldn't want to swap queens at this moment. Bishop g5 is actually just winning. I mean, we can even stop here with the queen coming here next, right? Let's have a look. So queen, where does the queen go? Here. We come in check. King here. And now, well, I think this check looks pretty good, right? King comes here. Check. King has to come here. Check. King has to come here. And then this one. Boom! What a beautiful line. Bishop takes e6, and now after this check, it can't come back, so we come to this position. So yeah, okay. So just to go over that again, sorry about the little confusion there. Is you know, bishop takes h6. If d6, we just play bishop g5, and this allows our queen to swing over, and we have 4 pieces attacking a lone king. It must be mate. So g takes, let's finish off with this, and now we just come in queen to g6, and we have a queen and 2 knights attacking, and black can't defend here. He just can't defend this position. Let's have a look. Rook f6 has been crazily played, rather desperate to get the queen there. That's how bad black's position is in this structure. For example, if the queen goes here, we can just take here, check, and after king to g8, we can even just start grabbing the material back. Or if you think you have time, which I would want to play, I'd want to go knight here, check, but I want to take my e-pawn, so I might even consider just castling here, keeping that one in, looking for a rook swinger, getting my knight to g5. I want to go knight g5, but I don't want to allow that one with check. I mean, yes, it's winning, yeah? You know, there's no way black can survive. So, okay, let's have a look at this rook f6 desperation move. Well, I mean, there's a number of ways to win, and yeah, this is just absolutely winning in this position. We can even just go queen h5 here. I mean, let's stop there. So very nice lines, right? So let's just go back to this. Well, let's run through it again. I mean, it's complicated stuff. So d4, knight takes d4, critical. Now we're playing this surprising move. Bishop c5, critical. Knight takes here, pretty much the only way black can play. We grab on f7, and we come and take the bishop. The black king has to come out. And now we bring in the reinforcements. Black now has to create an escape square for his king. And now we want to get our queen and knight to the right squares. And now the old main line, king to h7, is met by knight d5, threatening into f6. And rook f8 fails actually to this move. And black is losing. So the only other option is rook e8. And this is black's best defense. After this move, well, there's a couple of options. Knight takes c7 is our main line. If we try the same tactics we tried before with queen to e4 check, it's still playable, but I don't think it's more than a draw. So, I mean, a good thing about some of these lines, if I was playing against a strong player who played the Petrov, let's say I get to this position and they've had to find h6 and they now have to find rook e8. Finding rook e8 seems to be quite tricky to me. If they go knight c6, I mate them. Even this can happen to strong players. And then if they go rook e8, I have the choice of now taking a draw, which I'll show you just in case you need a draw for whatever reason, or playing for the win. And if you want to take the draw, then queen e4, I think with best defense is a draw. The king goes to h8, and now we try the same tactic. And now if queen g6, as we did before, black's rook is on a better square. It was on this square before, and with rook e6, black starts to defend. So the point is, knight here is met by queen takes, and this is where we'd love to be castled. If we had that extra tempo, it would be winning, but it's not. So in actual fact, at some point, we should now play queen f4. And me and Richard were analysing this, not going to go into the lines here, but just to let you know that the computer indicates this is a draw with best play. Again, I'm not recommending this because I don't want to go down draw lines, but it's good to know that you can go here, here, and take something you might want to do a little bit of work on yourselves. But our main suggestion is now taking on c7. It's a little bit of a pity to go materialistic, but you know, we can't hope to win every game in a blaze of glory, can we? So knight takes c7. And now black has 3 moves. He can move the d pawn, either d6 or d5, trying to get the rook in the game. Before we go for that one, let's have a look at knight c6. And this will most likely transpose to some d6 lines. Here, I think we should go queen e4 check, guarding that one. And now, I don't really want to grab that one. My knight's probably going to be trapped anyway. Let's grab the most important one. And after bishop e3, my idea is to just win the knight there. So we're going to get a more normal game. It's actually going to be, equal on material after something like d6 castles. But my initiative is still there. My development is superior than black's. And we are now at least material equality. We can certainly play for a win after this. Our knight still has roots in. Our queen is nicely centralized, and opposite colored bishops help the attacker. So this is still good. So what about the d pawn moving straight away? Well, d5 is quite an interesting move. Black desperately trying to break out. We don't want to lose any time. So queen d3 check, and now king to g8. Not so much fearing this move anymore because black's got better development now with the pawn on d5. So I always recommend we take on e8 because that rook is very useful. And now we actually just play the same thing. Bishop e3. And white is a pawn for a piece down, of course, but the knight on h1 is stuck, and I don't see it getting out. And this occurred in a correspondence game, Van Leeuwen versus Zayonts, 2015. And the best defense to black seems to be queen f7, castles, knight c6, just giving that one up. And in actual fact, now white decided, and this is correspondence, so they're using very high level computers here, that queen takes d5 was best, bishop e6, queen b5, bishop g4, queen b3. It's funny how you leave this knight here for so long. And after queen takes here, knight takes e5, rook takes h1, they agreed to a draw, which is, you know, a high-level correspondence game. And, you know, you can certainly play this one on, you know, if you want to. But, of course, like I mentioned before, with absolute correct play from black in a couple of these lines, he can get really to what we could consider equality, I think. It's actually, if you want to play for a win, there's actually, we were thinking, you know, if we got this ourselves in a game, that's another thing I want to do with courses. I want to be able to play these courses myself with full confidence. We're actually thinking that you might be able to go rook f1 here with the idea of, you know, trying to take the knight. And you know, if you take on knight here, I want to save my pawn. And if you go like rook e8, king d2, angling for bishop d4 and pushing these pawns. And actually, you know, if I had to try and win, then I'm going to win this knight at some point. This seems like another way you can play on. So d5, going back, is one of black's best defenses. And if black is finding all of these moves, well done to him. But it by no means the game's over. We're just going to have to play in that 20-move deep ending kind of line. Now, d6 is actually a more common idea because black's figuring he wants to strike the center straight away. And as always, we get rid of that one. And now queen e4 is a useful check because we kind of now have pressure here, so we restrict that bishop. This is one of the reasons in that correspondence game, black might have put a pawn here. And after the king retreats, our same idea. Just trap that one. Let's say knight c6. This will transpose basically after we castle queenside. And now castle's queenside anyway. And this is a position where we can assess things. The tactics are stopped. Now, it's equal on material. Black has an isolated pawn and a slightly weakened king side, as we've seen. Ideas the knight coming in to this square. This position is clearly not dead. I expect a fair assessment. This has been tried out in quite a fair few correspondence games. The thing with correspondence games, the players often have time, obviously, to use computers and other resources, and they try out very interesting lines. I would say that it's probably, again, roughly even. I think black has a bit of activity. But if I was going to pick this line for black or that other one we saw that went into the ending, I think this is riskier for black because he does have the problem with this pawn and the problem with the g6 square. So black has to be careful still. Normal developing moves can just lead him into trouble. So there's been two correspondence moves. One of them went queen h5, and the other correspondence game went queen f7. Queen f7, very exciting. And this is the kind of move you play in a correspondence game because you know how the tactics are working out. And after rook f1, queen takes a2, white now tried knight g5. And again, this is quite crazy. Two major threats, f8, so black has to play bishop f5. And now rook f5, king d2, king e2, pawn takes knight. And now king f2, queen takes b2, rook takes g5. And again, I'm not spending a lot of time on these lines because you can check them out in the move trainer and they're not that relevant. They're so deep. But this position here, again, was reached. And actually, it left white with quite some initiative because of this ideas. We're only a pawn down. We've kept some attack going. And our king has done a nice walk there. Queen h5, on the other hand, seems more sensible. And now this knight h4 move, continuing to fight and also stopping bishop to this square. So bishop e6, and now just h3. And this sets a little trap. I mean, we want to, in this position, we want to actually get our last piece into the game, right? So we kind of want to play rook to d1 and rook to d6. This is also interesting. But the reason we're going h3 first, we're stopping queen g4, which would lead to quite a dry draw-like position. So let's say after rook to d1, maybe queen g4 here is playable. Actually, yeah, maybe just about playable. But the reason we like h3, we always have now this nasty idea, and there's a big trap here. And the trap, this sets a big trap, is that let's say rook d8. We now go knight g6 check, and the king can't run into a discovered check, and now g4, trapping the queen. And that's like the little subtle reason we're playing h3. And after h3, black's got to do something to stop that one, and our rook can come in. So it's certainly not dry, not game over. And I think we can really therefore evaluate that in this main line, after the most common move, king h7, knight d5, the game is very much alive. And if black finds rook e8, well, congratulations. But even after knight takes c7, it's game on. There's a lot to play for, and it's a fun position to push with. So now Aronian's move of knight c6. Well, knight c6 is a way to fight in straight away, and here we should stick with our guns. We've got a couple of options, right? We can check with a queen, or check with a knight, or bring in the knight to d5. Now, first of all, checking with the queen, king f7, I don't think really helps us. It helps the black king run back. Checking with the knight in this square on h4, it's going to be a draw. So actually, even here, I thought Aronian's avoiding the draw, but this sideline knight h4, if you're desperate to get a draw, I think this is just going to be a draw, right? With check, check, and like this. Yeah, black's king can never really run to f8 because of this one, and this is going to be really bad. We'll win the rook. So that's one way to draw, but knight d5 is our way to play for a win. And for example, king h7, knight f6, this trick which we've seen before, forcing immediate resignation. So knight d5 is a very tricky move. Now, rook to e8 here is also not working for black. And this is something where your opponent could get his ideas mixed up. And now we see a tactic that we saw in that model game, El Masi versus Giri. Queen e4 check, king f7. What is the tactic? Bishop takes h6. And this has actually occurred in a number of games. And the point in this one is to facilitate knight g5. And if the bishop's taken, to come in here. And again, you can look at the Giri game at the start of this course. I need to, keep wiggling a bit, keep the circulation going. I want to, I'm a bit like impatient chap. So I'm sorry if I'm wiggling my way a little bit too much. You'll just have to wiggle with me. And this bishop h6, again, look at that game to see how that goes. But rook e8 is actually a very bad move because of this very attractive tactic. So what can black play here? Well, the only thing he can play is d6. This is the most accurate defense, trying to help out with the bishop. We're going to now not go for knight f4 because now king h7. This is a draw. This happened in Nepo Onatchi versus Aronian, the Skilling Open, which I was commentating on 2020. And this was because Nepo was up in the match and a draw was a good result for him. Now, I think you can play for a win here, and you should with e6. And this is actually a familiar motive when the pawn comes to d6, which again, we did touch upon in that model game. And we're trying to stop the bishop coming in, and we now got a very useful attacking pawn as well, that pawn there. And the real point of this, of course, is that if bishop takes e6, which black would like to play, we now go here, and we don't take this one, which would allow a rook e8, and our pieces get a bit discombobulated. Instead, queen e4 check, and we're going to take that piece with check. g6, not advised, that's checkmate. And now if the king goes back, we take with check. So bishop f5, we take this with check. And now after this check, king here, black is hoping for a draw. But we can play queen d3 check first. We want to get the king to g8, because once we get the king to g8, we've made sure that rook is not going to escape. And now we see that variation and this idea, which comes up quite a lot of times, when we're not checkmating in these lines, we can revert back to bringing in our last two pieces, getting our king safe, and just trying to win that knight. Because often what happens when we're not checkmating, black has to give us some of his gifts back. Like in this way, he has to give us a bishop. So when we've grabbed a little bit of material, we can take it, and we can also think, right, okay, I've got a bit of material. I can now cash in my investment. And with castling and this knight dropping, this is just very good for white. We keep our attack, probably winning for white, I think, just winning. So after e6, black should try king h7. And now queen e4 is an important check, because we don't want to give this pawn away for free. And now king to g8. And now this pawn can't be taken because we take with check. And we can even, I was thinking about bishop e3 here, but then I realized that there's an even stronger move, even play e7. Let's just keep that pressure up. And this, the reason for this is that if we go bishop e3, it gives black the option of knight e7, and black can defend with such a move. But by playing e7, you can't take this one, because again, we win some of our material back here, and the attack continues. So it forces queen e8, and now, because we've done as much as we can, now we play bishop e3. Now, again, this move was mentioned in that Petrov defense book, because you know, to the credit of the author Lak Dawala, he did, as well as giving this line of king h7 where he missed knight d5, he did also mention Aronion's knight c6, and in his book he leaves it around here and said black stands only slightly worse. And I think he actually gives the line in that book of knight takes c7. But this is actually going to lead to a draw. I'm not going to go down the lines, but again, maybe his analysis was just missing a little bit with bishop f5. And again, this leads to a draw. But this is not our recommendation. We're improving on that text, and we're going bishop e3. And this is a much better move. It's just trying to get our last pieces in. Now, a couple of options here. Bishop d7 is the best move. Let's just see what happens if black takes on e7. We've mentioned this before. Well, funnily enough, this was quite a crazily brilliant move in this position. And the problem, well, I say the problem, now that black's got this queen here, if we take on this square check, black can move his king, and our knight is not easy to defend. This is the idea behind knight takes e7, trying to get out of problems tactically. If we castle queenside, then king f8 is also okay for black. But there's an amazing move here, and it's not an easy move to see. And that's why I do suggest for this chapter checking the move train out. There's a couple of chapters in the course where I really recommend that. And bishop g5 is a delightful idea to play. And the reason we're doing this one is to allow our knight to come into g5. This has to be taken because otherwise we're going to take there very safely with something and our attack continues. And when it is taken, now the point is after this check, well, the king can't actually go there because of knight g6. Let's just check that last line, make sure I get that right. So, sorry, after knight check here, king f7, I did say, yeah, not king f8. Because if king f8, we go to g6. But king f7 is the problem. So that's why we're playing bishop g5. And now after here, you have to go king f7. And now knight to g5 check. And black, again, he can't go to f8 because of knight g6. So he has to step out. And now the fun continues with castling queenside. Fascinating line, right? Rook f1 is the big idea. So, for example, this one will lead to mate. So black has to try and keep himself afloat with g6. And now queen to f4 does win the queen with some great practical chances. But I think even stronger, funnily enough, is knight to d5 check. And after king to g7, we now have the bizarre looking move, queen b4. And this is the hard move to see. And again, this is why I suggest you memorize these lines. Why queen b4? Because you want to get your rook to e1. Black's trying queen e5 in a lot of positions. So if we did a check straight away here, queen e5 defense. So before we do this, we're actually trying to play with just rook e1, and then our queen comes to this diagonal. The other idea is we can even consider queen here straight away, queen e5, and coming into c7. And even though we are a lot of material down, we have very good practical and compensation. This line, maybe black has some chances to hold, but only with absolute precise defense. Not easy. Another mistake that black can play after bishop e3 is rook b8, just preparing for this move. But this doesn't help. We have the simple castles, which I'd probably play if I couldn't remember what to do. But we also have the forcing knight takes c7. As queen takes c7, queen takes c7, knight takes c7 is black's idea. But funnily enough, we have bishop takes a7, and we win that rook anyway. Knight c6, we take the rook, and now king e2. And we don't even need to lose the c pawn. Let's move the c pawn. We're going to take the knight, and we're going to be a pawn up. So back to bishop e3. Black should try bishop d7, and now we should cash in on some of those points. I'm afraid to say. I mean, castling is interesting, but we should cash in at this moment in time because black is going to play this one here. I mean, castling is not completely ridiculous and trying to take that knight, but this is actually quite pleasant, and it forces us into a position which we can at least it gives me an easier job. I can at least make an assessment on. And the line I mean is queen takes e7, and now we take on a8, and already I think it's clear to see here that white's regained the rook, and we're going to be slightly better because of these pawns. We're probably going to lose our knight, but we're probably going to win that knight. So we're going to have a slight advantage due to the pawn structure after all this. Let's have a look. Well, let's not easily lose the knight. Bishop takes a7. We'll grab a pawn for it. King d2. That knight is trapped. And we get this kind of ending here. And of course, white must be better. White has now won a pawn because those weak pawns are going to drop. Black has some chance of defense with his mobile position. But of course, we can just come to assessment better for white here. Amazing variation, right? Amazing line. I'm surprised not more people play this. We're going to just run through it again. Very long video yet again. It has to be to cover everything. There's no choice, I'm afraid. But it's a very fun line. And after knight takes e4, we're going d takes, bishop c5 critical. We're going to look at d5 in the next video, then you're done. It's okay. But this is very sharp. And our bishop c4, knight f2 key. We take on f7. And our queen d5 check. The king has to come to g6. In this position, we take the bishop, of course, forcing knight takes h1. And now we bring in the reinforcements. And now black has to really play the move h6, because that king needs to run away in time for when our knights could possibly arrive on these squares attacking it, or our queen. Now we move the queen to c4, so the queen has options on e4 mainly. And if king h7, well, this doesn't seem to be the most accurate move in my eyes because of knight d5, with the big threat of knight f6 and queen f7. Black has to find rook to e8 here. And then after knight c7, in order to keep the balance, I think the main way you can keep the balance is by playing d5. And this just about holds on. And when we grab some material in these lines, which we're going to do here, what do? We've grabbed a little bit of our investment back. We now can play bishop e3 and castles, trying to just win that knight with the game ongoing. Might be equal this position, but there's a lot of play. So h6 seems a little bit tricky for black. Aronian's knight c6 might become the modern line. And after this one, we move in anyway. And this gives the threat of king h7, knight f6 check, which would win. So black needs to play d6. And here we can force a draw, as Nepo did. But of course, we play for the win with the very attractive e6 move. Black now has many more dodge to dodge. He has to run with his king. And now we're going to use that e-pawn into the position. And after queen to e8, the key move is bishop e3. And it actually looks that in these lines, black might be in a little bit of trouble. So even though we're saying that this modern line of Aronians, which is going to be knight c6, might be the thing to play for black, because Aronians played it. It might be popular, suggested in a lot of places. Black's still got some things to solve after knight d5, and it's not clear how he can gain easier quality. So very exciting line. I hope you enjoyed that. It's a lot to take in. Go and practice out the move trainer. Another way you can try and learn these lines is set up the position against the computer after some move or move 6 or 7 and play it out against the computer a number of times. The computer's obviously going to win, but then you can look at what the computer does, and eventually you should be able to get good results against the computer. Good way to train your opening variations. So exciting stuff. Long video again. Sorry about that, but it had to be done. Let's move on to the last variation of this Petrov now, which is not as hard work as this one. That's for sure.